Hi there, welcome to Gifted Guitars. Before we get started with today's project, I just want to say a few things. First off, many of you know that I got really sick last month and I had shingles. I was stuck in bed for a lot of the time. I had very low energy, so I missed a couple days posting videos, but I'm starting to feel better and I'm slowly working my way back to my regular workflow. And so I don't know if this video is gonna be as long as my typical videos, how much of the guitar I'll get done today, but I'm gonna try. So we'll see. Hopefully we get a little bit done on the guitar. Secondly, I am working on this Black Lives Matter guitar right here, and I want to say a couple things about that as well. I've received a few criticisms in the comment section, mainly aimed at the organization of Black Lives Matter, and I want to say that to me this is a movement, it is an important statement, and it is something we can't turn our backs on or diminish. Black lives do matter. That is an important thing to remember, and the reason it has to be said is because they have been treated as if they don't matter in many instances. So that is what this guitar is here to bring awareness to and what I'm raising money for. And at the end of this project, I will be auctioning off this guitar to raise money for an organization that helps Black families. The first thing that we have to do today, unfortunately, is make some corrections on the back of the guitar. A few people in the comment section very kindly laid out a few of the typos, or I guess paintos in this instance, that I did on the back of the guitar. I specifically want to say thank you to someone named Jordan who left a comment where they went through the whole guitar and found all the different typos on it and gave me the correct spellings of everything. It's super helpful. Thank you so much. I compiled a list, I transferred the list onto a document, then I put that into Photoshop, and somewhere along the way some of the letters got inverted or auto-corrected or what have you, and that's not okay. These are people's names. These are all victims of police brutality and racial violence, and I want their names correct on here. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how I was going to do this, and I was trying to figure out a way of doing it where you couldn't see that a mistake had been made or that a correction had been made. And then I started thinking about it, and I feel like it's symbolic to have it that way. So what I'm gonna do is go through, and you might at the end of the guitar be able to tell that a correction was made, but it's sort of symbolic of our journey, of us trying to not make things right, but acknowledge that things weren't right and do our best to make it not happen that way in the future. So I don't know, I feel bad that I got the names wrong initially, but I feel like in correcting them, we might end up with something even more meaningful. Furthermore, since each of these are people, any name that I'm gonna be correcting, I wanna hear their story. I, to be honest with you, did not look up all of these stories. I don't know what's behind all of these names individually. And so to start that process, I'm gonna look up each person whose name I misspelled on here, and as I correct it, I will be giving you some information that I find about these people and what they went through and why they are on the back of this guitar. The first name we're looking at is Emmett Till, and it is a very sad story from 1955. He was only 14 years old and he was lynched for flirting with a white woman at her family's store. The two men who kidnapped and brutally murdered Till were found not guilty by an all-white jury, and under the protection of double jeopardy, a year later they actually admitted that they did commit those crimes. Tanisha Anderson was from Cleveland. She was diagnosed with bipolar disease, and she was described by one of her family members as having an off day the day that 911 was called. Instead of an ambulance, police were called onto the scene and they arrested her very roughly. According to accounts, her head hit the pavement and she was dead by the time she reached the hospital. Victor Emmanuel LaRosa was being pursued by the police after a drug bust, and I want to be fair here and say that he did drive very recklessly in a stolen car in an attempt to get away, but at the time that the police officers caught up to him, he was unarmed, on foot, and 8 rounds were shot at him, and LaRosa died at the scene. Jonathan Sanders died in 2015. He was being restrained by police officer Kevin Harrington. According to witnesses, Harrington used racial slurs and held Sanders in a chokehold for more than 20 minutes. Michael Marshall died in jail. He asphyxiated on his own vomit while he was having a psychotic breakdown while being held down by multiple marshals for over 10 minutes. It was deemed a homicide, and looking into this particular case, I found it interesting that he was in jail for nonviolent trespassing, and the bail was set at $100. He was at a poverty level so low that he couldn't afford the bail of $100, and that's why he was still in the jail in the first place. Nathaniel Harris Pickett was a mentally ill individual who was seen hopping a fence into a parking lot, and a police officer who was on patrol attempted to arrest him. Pickett was unarmed and on foot, and through an altercation was shot dead by the police officer. After an attempt to pull over Benny Lee Tigner for a traffic violation, he continued to drive all the way to his house with the police officer following. The police officer then came out. There was an altercation of some sort, and according to the police, Benny brandished a weapon and was shot 9 times by the police officer. The court sided with the police department on this particular case, but Benny's family still insists that he did not own a gun at the time and that the police officer should have waited for backup before firing his weapon. The death of Seville Smith sparked 3 days of unrest and protest in Milwaukee in 2016. The shooting was done by a police officer who was kept on the force in spite of having multiple accounts of using excessive force and misconduct previous to this shooting. Unfortunately, Seville Smith is another individual who was diagnosed with mental illness. So that is just a few of the names that are on this guitar, and I'm gonna look into and learn more about some of the other people that are represented on here. Very sad stories across the board. All of these deaths are a tragedy, and the circumstances around them I sort of highlighted a little bit, but these people had lives leading up to that. They had families, they had friends, they had co-workers, they had lives. And that's really what's important here, is their lives, and that their lives didn't need to end in those moments. This was sort of a random sampling of the people that are on this list, and even within that random sampling, I noticed that a lot of people suffered from mental illness. And I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think that defunding the police is a horrible slogan. It doesn't explain what it is I think people are trying to do. I am glad that we have police officers. I feel safer because we have police officers. I have friends that are police officers. I think they serve a very important role in our community. But if we took some of the funding and some of the responsibility that we give police officers and reallocate it in a way that could be more helpful to people with mental disabilities, with drug problems, with poverty issues, I think that could go a long way. And it's at the very least worth talking about and discussing and debating and seeing what new ideas we can come up with. I feel like there are a lot of people on the back of this guitar that shouldn't be here. And it is something that we need to talk about, something we need to address, and now is the time to do it. So let's do it. All right, it's a few days later, and I am in the process of spraying this with guitar lacquer. You can see it's already got like a nice shine going to it, and then the other side is starting to look pretty cool too. I don't want to touch the surface of it, but it's looking pretty cool as well. You can see the shine right there. And then this texture is starting to get more definition to it because of the spray. I'm actually spraying this guitar a little differently than I normally do. The body of the guitar, I'm using this clear gloss. I'm also using a clear gloss on the headstock of the guitar, but where this differs is I'm using a satin finish for the back of the neck. So what I do is I spray the body of the guitar, I hit this with the clear gloss, and then I switch lacquers to do the back of it. And the reason I'm doing that is I don't want this to be sticky when I'm playing it. Sticky is kind of the wrong word. Your hand is sticky, and when it goes onto a surface that's smooth like glass, your hand kind of sticks to it. To counteract that, in other guitars that I've done, I've left this natural. This time I'm trying a satin finish on it to see how that feels. So yeah, every hour I'm going outside, spraying it, letting it dry for an hour, coming back, hitting it again, and then I'm gonna let this cure for about a week, and then I can sand it all down. It's a fun process. All right, I wanted to really quickly go over some of the spray technique that I use just in case you're interested in that kind of stuff. I use a respirator like this, and I use eye protection. I do it outside, which is really great for ventilation, but it's not so great because of wind, and the wind here is always shifting from one direction to the other. So I have to sort of position myself around the guitar and move so that the wind is coming from behind me and putting the paint on the guitar instead of putting it in my face. I'm using a spray called Color Tone. It comes with a fan nozzle, so instead of a cone, it sprays out like a fan, like a flat fan. And the nice thing about that is as long as I keep it in that sweeping motion, it gives me a nice even paint. I have had a couple nozzles from this company not work properly for me, which was a little disappointing, but on the whole, they do work pretty well. And the spray technique that I'm using, let's say I'm trying to spray this, is I will start the spray off of it, go across it, and then release the spray. And the reason I do that is whenever you start or stop the spray, any paint that's accumulated onto the nozzle squirts and splatters off of the nozzle. And so by making sure that that happens off of the piece and then getting that nice even coat across the piece and then releasing off the piece again, you eliminate any splatters. Not any splatters, but most splatters. Hey, it's a couple days later, and this is ready for a level sanding, which means I sand it down, kind of knock some of the high spots off of it, and then I can coat it with more lacquer and really get a nice smooth shiny finish to the entire guitar. I'm not gonna have time to do that this week. That's gonna have to be in the next video. But before I finish today, I really did wanna just put it all together, put some of the hardware on it, just a couple screws to hold them in place, just to get a feel of this guitar. What is this guitar gonna feel like when it's all together? I think that'd be a nice satisfying way to end this. So yeah, I'm gonna clip off these zip ties that I'm using to hold it up on the tree and put it together and see kind of what it is that we're looking at here. Okay, I'm gonna pick it up for the first time. I have not picked this up yet. Yes, there it is. This is looking really cool. The neck feels really good. I love the satin finish on the back of the neck. All my lines on here are pretty good. Sometimes when I mask, there's like a little bit of a bleed. I think it's all gonna turn out really nicely there. I love it with the hardware on there. I didn't put everything in there. There's no pickups. The electronics aren't in there, but it gives you an idea of what this guitar is gonna feel like, and it feels great. This is a great guitar. So you can see the yellow really popped in here, and the shine on this really brings out all of that texture, as well as over here. The light just hits off of there really nicely. You can kind of see some texture here that's called orange peeling. That happens with spraying, and I'm gonna knock that down with some sandpaper and then polish up the areas that are black. If you've been watching this build from the beginning, you'll know that this came with a different pick guard. The one that it came with was white. I really like the black. I think it was a good choice to go with the black. The pick guard is a 3-ply material. The top and bottom are black, and then there's this stripe of white that goes all the way around. It looks really cool. However, the dimensions were slightly different, so I had to go in here with my Dremel and carve out part of the pick guard. Now it fits in perfectly. There's a little bit of tightness right here that I'm probably gonna sand out by hand before I put this back together again. But overall, I am very impressed with this. I think that this is starting to look very nice. Once again, I want to point out that down in the description of this video, we have a few links that you can go to learn more about the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as other places you can go to learn more about how you can donate or be helpful in the fight against racism in this country. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a nice comment down in the comment section and hit that like button. If you are interested in what I'm doing here, I'm learning how to build guitars. I'm taking you along on the journey. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you get notified when I post new videos, like the one I'm gonna post next week, where I get started on the electronics of this guitar. I love working on the electronics. I have some fun plans in mind for this guitar, hopefully a few more surprises along the way, so be sure to check it out. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.